Hello again. A little while ago somebody asked me if I do a video on power sanding, which I'm going to do today. It is by no means a definitive guide because I'm no expert, but the times I've used it I've found it very useful and gives a good finish too, providing you adhere to a few little basic principles. The main principle is speed. Remember your lathe, in my instance the slowest it goes is 500 RPM, and that's the speed that I hand sand at. So if I've got a drill that's doing whatever revs, that is going to be increasing the speed at which the abrasive is attacking the wood. So a very light touch is necessary. I use the lowest speed on my drill because it's an old vari-speed mains power drill, which is handy for sanding. So I use that on its lowest RPM and use light touches and be very careful, because before you know it you can actually go down further than you want to and make the job look worse than before you started sanding it. So I'll reset the camera up, and I've got an old bowl here which I made about 9 months ago because I haven't got a great stock of bowls to show you, so show it on. So what I'll do is I'll make some marks on it and we'll get rid of it with the sanding. Then I'll put the button jaws on and reverse mount it and show you how I do the outside of the bowl as well. Okay, we'll see you in a minute. Okay, here we are back at the lathe. I've got an old bowl on. It's a bit thin, so hopefully we don't go through it. Just to show you the method that I use. So what I'm going to do first of all is just put a couple of grooves in it, or light marks that we quite often get when we start with a bowl, when we end up with a bowl. Okay, this bowl was made, as I say, about 6 months ago, so let's just pretend that that's the sort of a finish that we've got. Okay, now if you power sand that, you will be able to get that down to a smooth finish. Now what I intend to do for the purpose of this video is just to use the 120, which is what you'd use in that situation. As I say, I've got a variable speed drill and I've got it down to about the second setting, and there are 8 settings of speed. So I'll turn the work right down. It's a bit noisy now because I'm on the dust extractor on. Now, the important thing to remember when you're doing power sanding is to use a light touch and to make sure the work is travelling this way, your drill is travelling that way. So always keep it on that side. I do. Down to 500 revs in my case, as low as possible. Very quickly, starting to get rid of the grooves. Now I put rather large grooves in there, rather deep grooves actually, a bit deeper than I wanted to, but we'll carry on and see the job it does. Okay, now we can see here already that they're almost gone from here. Okay, I don't know if the camera picks that up. In the middle there, there's still quite a bit, but remember that the centre of your work is travelling much slower than the outside of the work. And obviously, the bigger the diameter of your bowl, the quicker the outside of the work is working. So if you keep the revs of your drill constant, it's going to have less effect with regard to taking away material as you get nearer to the centre. Be aware, don't keep the drill on the centre any longer than you would anywhere else, otherwise what you'll do is burn it. So there are two options. When you get to the centre, I quite often, if it's a bad situation, but let's be honest, the turners out there are going to say, well, you should never have a bowl in that state anyway. The tool work should be better. I totally agree. I'm only trying to demonstrate to you the swiftness relatively that you can get fairly bad marks out of your bowl. The main thing I found with bowl turning, and it's an obvious situation I suppose, when you're turning, doing that last final cut, the outside of the bowl is obviously less stable than towards the centre because there's not so much material to support it. So you get chatter. Now obviously you can hold the work behind here and put your thumb on your bowl gouge as you're giving it that final cut, but there will still be that little bit of chatter depending how thin your bowl is. And those little ridges are nowhere near as bad as that, but you get little ridges through there, and this is where power sanding comes into its own. You can do it by hand, but it takes a lot longer, and because you're trying to get rid of those little valleys, those little ridges, somebody said on YouTube a while ago, and I can't remember who it was, but it's a wonderful bit of advice. Don't try and sand out the ridge, the groove. Sand the material around it to go level with the groove, because if you're playing your sanding sandpaper on the groove, which psychologically you tend to do, all you're really doing is making that groove deeper. Sand the material around it and bring that to the level of the rut or the groove. Good advice, not from me, from somebody else. Okay, round here is perfect. This little bit there, because as I say, that is turning a lot less speed than the outside. So what I tend to do now, I'll just increase the revs on my drill and just concentrate on a little bit there, and then it should be done. There you can see we've got rid of everything, and we're only on the 120. So then from what I tend to go is 120 if necessary, and I don't use it very often, but the odd time I do. I go from 120, 180, 240, then I go to 320 and then 400. And then, as I say, if I feel it's necessary, I'll use wet and dry 600 for the final finish before I start coating. So that's the inside of the bowl, and I hope that demonstrates how swiftly you can actually get it to a really good finish, ready for whatever coating you're going to put on it. And as I say, I use this arbor here, which is a low profile arbor, and that, as I say, it's a 2-inch arbor. You can get 4-inch and you can get 6-inch. Okay, I've mounted the bowl up again on the button jaws. I put a few grooves in it, and I started to film, but the pad had worn out, so I changed the pad. And basically, it's just to show you when you're doing the outside of the bowl, keep here on this side as opposed to that side, in my opinion, and I won't go to the very edge because of the buttons catching. And you don't normally do the power sanding, excuse me, turn that off. You wouldn't normally do your power sanding on here anyway. You would have done it before you actually reverse the bowl to hollow out the inside. So all the sanding would be done while you still have a solid centre to your bowl. You finish the outside and you're preparing it for your final coating, not for doing your sanding. Not to be recommended at all to do power sanding in button jaws. Not a safe thing to do. I'm only doing it for demonstration purposes, and hence I shall only go about here. Alright, so we'll get on with that and see how it goes. You can see from there, with a minimum amount of effort and in a very short space of time, those inner grooves are almost gone. A few little more bits, we'll just do that there, get rid of that. There you go. The innermost one has gone completely, but I think you get the idea. You can see the grooves here, and it's got rid of that. And if these weren't in the button jaws and it was reverse mounted, to be honest with you, you wouldn't start sanding with tool marks that deep anyway. But for demonstration purposes, you can see that it's virtually gone there with a minimum of effort. So I hope that's explained the basic scenario regarding power sanding. Thanks very much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Cheerio.